Shares of Facebook are soaring after hours. Look at this, up more than 8% after that social media giant posted record profits after the bell. And despite all the privacy scandals, including one just today, the daily, the quarterly, the monthly active users on average were up 9% in December from last year. We're joined now by tech expert Brett Larson from Fox News Headlines 24/7. Brett, the incredible thing is that investors are just shrugging off all these privacy concerns and the daily scandals, right?
They don't seem to be bothered by this one bit, and it seems as though neither are the people using Facebook when they hear about these things. Just today, TechCrunch did this great piece. They dropped the news, and Facebook immediately pulled an app off the Apple App Store because it wasn't spying on kids. It was with their permission, tracking literally every single thing they did on their smartphone. I'm surprised as many parents, as Facebook says, gave permission for the younger kids, 13 to 15-year-olds that needed assigned parental consent to do this. I'm shocked that parents allowed that to happen.
I'm sure I would have.
But despite all the bad news for Facebook, investors love it, and there's good reason for that. If you want to reach a massive amount of eyeballs, not just here in the U.S., but all over the globe, Facebook is the platform where you go.
Yep.
Hey, Brett, it's Scott Martin from Chicago, where it's really warm today. But the Facebook news is helping me a little bit as we're long Facebook. So given that, and we've actually been long, admittedly, from some of the early days up to the rally last year, all the way down the mountainside here, do you think that, given everything that you just talked about, you think all that bad news is in the stock from now on?
I don't think it's going to be in the stock. It really doesn't seem like any of this bad news ever catches up with them. They've fallen into this trap so many times before, and it's become a pattern, right? Something goes wrong. They do whatever they want, for starters, because they're gigantic, and they can do that. They put out whatever kind of apps they want. They invade your privacy any way that they want to do it. They allow other companies to invade your privacy any way they want to do it. And when it comes out in public, they step back and go, oh, man, we're sorry. We didn't mean to do that. And nobody cares. People sign onto Facebook the next morning, the stock goes up the next day, and then they post their earnings. So clearly no one cares what Facebook does. And it's terrifying when you really think about it.
But from a regulatory perspective, Senator Josh Hawley, who's the new freshman senator from Missouri, said that he would actually team up with our favorite person on the show, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for legislation. So there does seem to be a drumbeat in both parties towards regulation.
There does seem to be discussion of regulation. But when you talk about regulation and then you go to these congressional hearings where you have Sundar Pichai from Google coming in, you have Mark Zuckerberg coming in, the congressmen, no offense, they have no idea what these people are talking about. So do you want them legislating and writing the regulations? We don't, because they don't really understand how this technology works.
But that doesn't mean they're not going to try. That doesn't mean
you're right, but the problem with that is what's going to end up happening is you're going to get lobbyists from Google and lobbyists from Facebook and lobbyists from Twitter who are going to come in and say, this legislation protects our business model, this ensures that we remain the 800-pound gorilla, this ensures that we are too big to fail. This is the legislation we're going to get behind. And our representatives have no idea.
Is Facebook too big to fail?
Facebook is, at this point, is too big to fail. Google shut off the Google Circles, or I don't even remember what it was called. It was such a non-entity. But there is no competition right now for Facebook. There is no other platform that has that many users. Facebook has become the new cable company. They have become the cable giant.
There's no cost on the right or the left for making a big, tough stand against Facebook because it has no friends politically.
Right.
I think this is the new cigarette stock. It's going to produce tremendous returns for years to come because it makes a lot of money, and the shares are going to be kept chronically cheap because of all the hubbub about privacy. Meanwhile, people are going to use the heck out of the service. By the way, it's free. We should repeat. That's part of the deal.
You're not the customer. You're the thing that they are selling. Not everybody logs in and thinks, oh, this is so great. It's so convenient. It's free, just like Gmail is free.
You're the meat.
Just like all this other stuff is free.
I still think Facebook's going to beat all of this. Number one, there's going to be all these legal technicalities about what they're doing and what it really constitutes and how are you going to prove anything and what does this really mean. My theory on this, and I'm not the tech guy here, you are, is that they have a whole closet full of algorithms ready to go. Oh, you don't like that one? We're going to plug this one in. It's even worse, but now you have to prove that. And again, you have these folks in Congress who barely understand how to operate a computer, much less really get to the technicalities of that to prove it's wrong.
We're seeing what privacy legislation looks like with GDPR in the European Union.
Right.
And so far, the way it has been dealt with is the companies say, we're just going to do whatever we want because every once in a while we're going to get fined because when we have 2 billion users worldwide, we can't exactly monitor every little tiny thing that we're supposed to do. So every once in a while we're going to get a $5 million fine.
So what's the nuclear option for legislators? Say you do that again, it's a $30 billion fine?
The nuclear option for legislators...
No, they can break them up.
Yeah, the nuclear option for legislators is to actually understand how technology works, get people in who understand how technology works, and sit those people down and have them explain it to you.
I'm going to defend the Congress
Which
here
is impossible.
because there's a lot of people.
There are a lot of Congress people.
No, it's not the members actually, but it's the staffers, the young staffers who are actually quite smart, who I do think know this in detail. I agree with you holistically. The point about lobbyists.
Yeah, but they can't. They try to train the congressmen or the senators they work for, and then they still look like idiots when they're up face to face with
each other. This is not one side or the other. Both sides have good and bad when it comes to understanding technology. But when you have representatives asking the head of Google, why does my iPhone have a certain ad on it? Clearly, he has no idea what he's asking.
How to set up an internet address.
What about Instagram? That seems because a lot of people are saying, well, the young millennials are not going to be going to Facebook, but they got Instagram.
They have Instagram, they have WhatsApp, and just this week, Facebook said all the messaging platforms, what we're going to do is on the back end, all that technology is going to be exactly the same. So whether you're messaging on Facebook Messenger or Instagram or WhatsApp, it's all going through the same platform. That gives Facebook the ability to make one user profile more.
Brett Larson, great to see you, Brett. Thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Well, top U.S. and China officials resuming their high-level trade talks today as both sides face intense pressure to nail down some kind of deal before March 1st. The talks that started today are expected to continue into early evening. Is that a good or a bad sign? We debate it next. Top U.S. and China officials returning to the bargaining table today, resuming trade talks amid growing pressure on both sides to get a deal done by March 1st when the tariffs go up. They're expected to continue into the early evening. All eyes are going to be on President Trump tomorrow when he sits down with China's vice premier. So what can we expect from these talks this week? Joining us now is Gordon Chang. He's author of the book, The Coming Collapse of China. So, Gordon, who here has the upper hand, China or the U.S.?
We do, David. Look, if you look at China's recently released trade statistics, China's trade surplus with the U.S. last year was 91.9% of its overall merchandise trade surplus. That does not include the transshipments through Hong Kong. When we get those numbers, and that only get them from the U.S. Commerce Department, that means the surplus with the U.S. is going to be more than 100% of China's overall merchandise trade surplus. Chinese economy in December looks like it's contracting from all the initial numbers. They're really hurting, David. They've also got problems in their political system. I could go on, but you get the point.
The DNI, Dan Coats, the Director of National Intelligence, gave testimony before the Congress yesterday. And one of the things that was in this report talked about more cooperation between the Russians and the Chinese militarily, and especially as it relates to countering us. I think that's something that's been around for a while, but for some reason, many people in the foreign policy community discounted this. What do you think about the intelligence community saying that there is this newfound cooperation between these two countries?
Yeah, this is really important because you have Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping for a very long time have been cooperating. You can go back to the 2013 Syrian civil war. You had Chinese and Russian vessels sortying together in the Eastern Mediterranean as a warning to NATO and the U.S. And you've seen this now consistently. So, Morgan, this is important because, remember the Cold War, how it ended? China and U.S. on one side, Soviet Union on the other. Now you've got Russia, China on the other side, with Iran and North Korea, and then us.
And it seems like Russia and China also together in Venezuela, a totally different topic.
Absolutely.
Look, the way I look at this is, tariffs are one issue, and it seems like everyone wants tariffs lower. The big thing to me here, Gordon, seems to be like intellectual property protection. Now, China, it seems to be notorious in violating and flouting all sorts of rules. To get a deal done, if China needs to get a deal done, do you think that they're going to blink, at least verbally, and finally say, yes, we're going to address this, and will it be credible?
Yeah, it won't be credible because, right now you have Xi Jinping's Made in China 2025 initiative to dominate now 11 tech sectors. They can't get to there by 2025 unless they steal even more U.S. IP. And remember, the most important indictment against Huawei yesterday was the theft of T-Mobile IP. Huawei was built on stolen U.S. IP, starting from Cisco, now all the way through to T-Mobile.
Yeah, I've got a question. It's for you, Gordon, or for anyone who has an answer to this, and it's about the Chinese consumer. We talk all the time about this top-down influence on trade in the form of these tariffs. But there's also choices that consumers can make. And I don't know of anyone here in the U.S. who looks at this tariff spat and says, you know what, I'm no longer buying those $5 gym shorts at Walmart because they're made in China. Either they were saying that before or not, and it hasn't changed. But I wonder in China, has there been this kind of nationalistic or prideful backlash among consumers where they say, we're going to buy fewer American goods?
Well, there's more of that, and the reason is because Beijing has actually pushed that. You know, there have been campaigns directed by the Communist Party since about March of 2013 against Apple, and we've seen them against Japanese goods and South Koreans. Now, of course, the U.S. We're going to see much more of this because Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler, doesn't really have an alternative. And so, yeah, we're going to be on the target.
Hey, Gordon, it's Scott Martin from Chicago, sending you warm thoughts from the tundra. Really enjoyed the book, by the way. Actually bought it in a store called Borders back in the day, which was a lovely experience. But given that was like 15 years ago, and I'm still waiting for the collapse to come. So is this the collapse that we're talking about, finally putting China's feet to the fire as they approach the U.S. as the world's biggest economy?
Yeah, I actually think so. You know, in that book, I said, look, the Communist Party was going to be gone by the middle of 2011. I didn't see the 2008 downturn and some other things, so I'm wrong on timing. But, you know, in December, the initial numbers show the Chinese economy started to contract. We've seen really serious problems at the top of the Chinese political system with a number of important Communist Party meetings being skipped, a real sign of distress. This is a really bad story for Beijing, and I'm worried about a closing window of opportunity where these guys are just going to lash out because they don't have any other alternative.
Gordon, final question on Huawei. Secretary Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, says he's not going to let the Huawei prosecutions interfere with trade talks, but I'm wondering, how can you avoid it? It's like the elephant in the room, right?
Right. Well, look, China's challenge against us is multifaceted, and we're going to have to reply to all of Beijing's attacks, whether it's Huawei, trade, North Korea, South China Sea. We don't have the luxury of that. And our responses are going to bump into each other like we're seeing right now, but it's just unavoidable, David.
Gordon, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Good stuff.
Thank you.
Well, the crisis in Venezuela continuing to escalate. Trish Regan spoke with the opposition leader, Juan Guaido, in a Fox Business exclusive. She joins us next.